But UNDP and the World Bank actually produced an energy damage assessment report. Farid had mentioned many of those damages and the figures there, but just from my perspective to say that this assessment was carried out to look at from the February 24th to December 31st kind of damages that were done. It was very much aligned with what we call the rapid damage needs assessment that was jointly done by the European Union and the World Bank and UNDP. And it really looked at the impact of the energy sector damages, which highlighted basically that 1,500 strikes were done during this period of time on the energy infrastructure.
Yeah, you did it. So please, you can be silent.
Okay. Hopefully that's a little bit better, and I'll try to still go quickly through my presentation. But just to say some of the figures that came up actually is that the damages was about 61.4% of the energy power generation capacity was damaged. 71% of the thermal power and combined heat and power generation was damaged. 43% of the high voltage transformers were damaged, and the total only damages were in 10 million, but as was mentioned also before, if you take into consideration the losses caused by this kind of attacks, it gets to the region of $47 billion. And about 12 million people either had no electricity or had partial electricity throughout this period of time. Just trying to move it on. So just maybe to say, and again, Farid already mentioned this, but very briefly in terms of the emergency needs, there is clearly at least towards the winterization, about $1 billion worth of needs. That can also go up in terms of $3 billion for the losses that were occurred that would need to restore from now till the beginning of winter, which is actually the critical period to prepare people for the 2023-2024 winter. What we have found is that the transmission and alternative emergency generation areas are of critical concern. UNDP is actually working with a number of companies and also the Ministry of Energy and Ukraine Agro. We have purchased 5 transformers. There's about 55 to 60 transformers that are needed to replace the energy grid. 2 of those are from purchase from UNDP is already being shipped to Ukraine. So it will be the first 2 that actually gets delivered to Ukraine. It's large auto transformers. We're also looking at alternative emergency generation, which includes gas turbines. We have procured 2 gas turbines that will be installed for Kharkiv and Odessa city, which will also obviously be of critical importance for heat generation and for restoring some of the kind of heat and energy losses that have occurred. In terms of emergency needs, just very quickly, or the immediate needs, I just want to highlight maybe 1 or 2 other areas. So really critical infrastructure is needed in terms of the high voltage areas. Decentralized power generation is important, gas-fired power generation, and then obviously the high voltage power generation needs to be done. I'll end with maybe just 2 slides because I think this is also where we look at the future of Ukraine, and this was also mentioned by Farid in terms of what needs to be done. But there are really clearly areas that we have also from our development perspective wants to invest and where Ukraine are very interested in investing. The first is really upgrading the technology for high voltage power substations. The second is around biogas and biomass fired cogeneration opportunities that exist. Battery energy storage, obviously of crucial importance, and how to build more wind and solar capacities is also something definitely needed for the future of the country. In terms of longer term needs, maybe just to say that really the energy reform, which the government has taken really seriously, which we have heard about, also aligning it with EU standards is of the utmost important. It's great to have a government that's pushing for these energy reforms that also makes the investment much more incentivizes the investments for private sector companies and for financing institutions. There's also further integration of Ukraine with the European grid, which is mentioned. It's great to see that there are already exports starting to happen. I can tell you it's probably a miracle, but it's already happening. It's incredible to see that in Ukraine on a day-to-day basis, what's happening. And then really around carbon financing as well, and getting the private sector involved in both in de-risking and also in financing opportunities. We feel that these are absolutely of crucial importance, coming together, looking at the financing around innovative investments and how that can also work with companies, private sector companies like those that are being represented here and that we heard about. So thank you very much. I think we are looking at a partnership approach here where both private sector, public sector, but also many of the investment and financing institutions are looking forward to working on this very exciting initiatives and look forward to recovering and building a more resilient Ukraine. Thank you very much.
I'm a member of Ukraine Task Force. In fact, we created Ukraine Task Force back in 2014 after the hostilities started in the East, with the pledge to invest 3 billion euros in 3 years, which we delivered after 2014. And unfortunately, Ukraine Task Force had to remain in place. And now the same people working on reconstruction now. So my background, I worked on Ukraine-related matters for some time. I used to work for European International Energy Agency, and we were writing energy policy review of Ukraine back in 2012. Okay. Yeah. So since the war started, EIB has transferred to Ukraine 1.7 billion of funds. Mainly based on the already existing projects. So the immediate response was 668 million against the existing project, I think was with SMEs. Then it was 650 million related to transport and 350 million, 350 million due to, against energy efficiency projects. And 50 million to Ukrenergo for the transmission system emergency needs. So in energy related, you could argue that here is 350 million for energy efficiency and 50 for transmission. Then we also do kind of charity support to Ukraine. So 2.5 million was donated by European Investment Bank. We don't normally do grants and donations, but in this case we did, to 7 NGOs working with education, orphanages, medical and food supply. So our portfolio in Ukraine is around 7 billion euros now. We started operations in Ukraine in 2007. And our mandate is from European Union, which provides political guarantees for our investments outside of the European Union, including Ukraine. So this also, apart from loans, we also managed to get so-called technical support, because as you probably know, in public sector operations, often the capacity of the counterparts is not sufficient to run international projects. So we managed to get funds, usually from European Union sources, to get support for project implementation. Although companies like Ukrenergo and Hydroenergo, they're very experienced. They've done a lot of international projects. Such companies do not need technical assistance. Okay. Also, for you, might be interesting, because we're talking about reconstruction, to know that an EIB can finance normally only up to 50% of project cost. So normally in projects, the idea behind this is not to crowd out other investment, so we call it to catalyze other investors, like private sector and other IFIs. About our portfolio in Ukraine. So this kind of categorizes them by various subsectors, and I highlight in red which are energy related. So it's a small font, but yeah, I will kind of read out to you. So second section is what we called categorized here as connectivity, which is transmission system operation. With Ukrenergo, we have had two successful projects, quite large ones. Rivne-Kiev high voltage and Zaporizhzhia-Kakhovska lines. They've been completed, although the company is quite efficient. In fact, there are savings in the project, and the savings are being used for constructing other assets. And we have a newer project, sustain the substation's reliability. And in fact, we're repurposing the loan with Ukrenergo for these substations to use for kind of more urgent emergency repairs and other investments. So in the third, sustainable energy, so we put here energy efficiency related projects and renewables as well, hydropower. So we have in energy efficiency, we have two projects, public buildings, very large, 300 million loan. I'll talk a bit more in the next slide. Also, we have university, it was higher education. We have energy efficiency in university buildings. So quickly on sustainable, this is information from our website, basic information about the substation reliability. So as I mentioned, Ukrenergo is a good client, and the situation has changed. So now they're repurposing the loan, and we're stand ready to support Ukrenergo with additional disbursements if they need. Just one more slide.
I apologize, but
so finishing. So just two quick slides. So this is energy efficiency related investments. So on the left, this is not pure energy efficiency, these are buildings, but on the right, you can see this 300 million loan, which is, despite the war, is going ahead. And we started, I'll show a bit more. So this is together with this announcement in European Union website. So this project is for modernization of buildings with energy efficiency focus in health, schools, kindergartens, sport and cultural facilities. And it's done together with the various European counterparts, including E5P grant of 10 million to this project and technical assistance. UNDP, by the way, is also a counterpart in this project. In hydropower plants, in hydro, so last slide, in hydro section sector, so we had a long-standing project which we doing together with Ukrhydro, and we are going to disburse to them depending on their needs for rehabilitation. Also, we're thinking if the company is ready to increase investments in other assets. So on the left, also there are a few ideas we're discussing with them for further investments in hydro generation. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you really very much.
EBRD is the largest financial investor in the country and in the energy sector of Ukraine. I am senior banker in charge of energy sector projects for many years in the country. And I will provide you with the outline of what EBRD has been doing in the sector recently and specifically since the start of the war. And just a snapshot information of importance of Ukraine for the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The total cumulative portfolio of investments in the country of EBRD for more than 30 years of operations amounts to 18 billion euro. Total number of projects we have implemented is more than 500. And current portfolio of projects amounts to 4.7 billion. and energy sector amounts for around 40% of this current portfolio of projects. The key focus of the European Bank in Ukraine since start of the war was put on trade finance, energy security, and the maintenance of functioning of vital infrastructure, food security, and support to functioning of private sector. It's key for Ukrainian real economy to continue functioning, and the energy sector is the backbone of the functioning of the entire economy. Therefore, we placed special efforts to support of the energy sector. And last year, and since start of the war, we invested more than 510 million euro in support of its core company, country TSO, Ukrenergo. The goal of the EBRD to invest in Ukraine for the period of 2022-2023 around 3 billion euro, and EBRD funding is backed up by donor co-financing grants. And it would not have become possible without support of donor guarantees, because our exposure to new projects since start of the war in Ukraine is 50% guaranteed by EU G7 donors. Here is a quick summary of core flagship engagements in infrastructure support by EBRD since start of the war. Ukrainian railways last year obtained 149 million euro of repurposed undrawn
Excuse me,
commitments.
Olga,
Yeah.
if you can go to the conclusion, because the time schedule is very, very tight.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I will quickly skim through my slides. Basically, the core support we provided to the energy sector last year was focused on energy security, and you can see that Ukrenergo obtained more than 500 million euro support, and one of the projects was very promptly structured and implemented since launch of major missile attacks on infrastructure of Ukrenergo. 300 million of EBRD loan, 70 million of Dutch grant co-financing. This loan is also targeting support to replace damaged and destroyed equipment of substations with focus on high voltage transformers. We support Ministry of Energy and Ukrainian authorities with matching needs of infrastructure with donor support availability, and maintain energy aid platform, which will be fully functional by the end of May. And our key purpose this year and the upcoming periods is to continue to support crucial SOE for the sector functioning. Our clients are Ukrhydroenergo, as I mentioned, Ukrenergo, Energoatom. We are in discussions with gas TSO, which is important for energy security of the country. And we realize that efficient functioning of the sector will not be possible without restoration of the generation infrastructure, in particular with focus on distributed energy generation, and this cannot happen without involvement of private sector. We are the lead investor in the renewable sector, and we would like to continue to support Ukrainian energy sector and private clients with investments in this area. And our efforts in the coming years will be focused on de-risking these investments and support of private investors.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Slava. I'm part of IFC. IFC is a member of the World Bank Group. IFC's role is mainly in the private sector, and we are here to share what we can do with private sector companies willing to invest in Ukraine. We are a team of about 35 people. On that team, I'm the investment officer overseeing Ukraine infrastructure. In infrastructure sector, energy business is about half of our portfolio. And we typically work with multinational companies, with regional companies, with large Ukrainian private sector companies. We can finance municipalities and municipal entities without a sovereign guarantee. And in some select cases, we can provide financing to state-owned companies. Those would usually the government would usually need to decide to be privatizing those. So that's what we call pre-privatization financing. The approach for Ukraine over the next 2 years is basically formulated in the Ukraine Resilience Action, which is an IFC board-approved program for Ukraine, where we are planning to invest about $2 billion, substantially supported with donors. The main idea is over the next 2 years, we'll be supporting existing companies in Ukraine with liquidity support. Main idea is not to allow these companies to leave the market. It's going to be much more complicated to then have them come back. Secondly, we're looking for select opportunities in energy, transport, and other infrastructure subsectors. The main idea is focus on the more safer areas of Ukraine to the extent possible. Consider movable, distributed types of assets as opposed to large, hard infrastructure for the time being. And of course, leverage the donor funding to the extent possible. We really encourage companies not to discharge ambitious projects in Ukraine quickly, and think about the ways how you can leverage DFI support, how you can leverage donors and government support to address the viability gaps and make those investments happen. We also see another part of the solution in countries just outside Ukraine. We're supporting projects in Poland and Romania, in infrastructure, in urban utilities, and we have a huge advisory mandate with the government to help them maximize private sector investment for reconstruction. That's where we partner with Farid and other ministries to come up, among other things, with an ambitious pipeline of PPP and concession projects, which will be prepared during war, and then will be a large pipeline to be invested when the safety situation allows. Zooming in on the energy, we have a very diversified energy mix in our portfolio. I'm sharing with you some of the projects. We've already received requests from private sector companies. These are distributed energy projects in Ukraine, renewables in the western parts of the country, and biomass CHPs. The PPP and concession advisory program is currently focusing around power transmission infrastructure, again, CHPs, battery storage, and energy efficiency to municipalities. And finally, I want to quickly introduce a relatively new product, which in some cases we can partner with companies which projects aren't yet ready for investment to provide pre-investment support. We are able through co-developments to invest up to 8 million euros to co-develop projects with private sector companies. A more lightweight format to do that would be through a collaboration, and typically that would be under 1 million of cost sharing for feasibility study work and things like that on our end. I'll stop there, and I'm happy to chat more after the panel. Thanks again for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.